this is Rob Lundberg here. Welcome to conversation number 60. I hope you enjoyed that little jingle by Walter ETC and video produced by artist Kevin Gilmore. Is punk dead? That's the question I seek to answer, and more during my conversation with the Dollyrots Kelly Ogden, the first half of the married punk duo. We start into her journey from studying, I believe, marine biology in Florida into going full-bore punk rocker, traveling the states with her partner, Louis Cabezas, living out of a van, getting their first gig in LA, and then she goes into telling the tale of her favorite onstage moment, and of course, which she does not remember, puking and with blood all over her. We then transition into the moment when the Dollyrots signed with Little Steven Van Zandt's label Wicked Cool Records, and following that, what it's like to balance a family life and raising kids while on tour, finishing with what's next for the duo, whom truly have brought the punk spirit to this contemporary age. So please enjoy this very vibrant and energized conversation. Thank you. RL. Cool, Kelly. Where I guess where to begin? I always like to generally start with the beginning, middle, end kind of format of like, how did you get into music? But I guess how have you been getting, creative work wise? How have you been adapting to the COVID situation the last couple of years? Like how have you? It seems like previously you guys were touring a lot. And now obviously everything it's been so tough to actually plan out tours and stuff. How have you been keeping that momentum going, I guess, with your music and getting it out there to your respective fan base?
I mean, honestly, it's been the biggest struggle of COVID. I mean, Louis and I, my husband and I, are pretty much the Dollyrots. Our drummer Justin's been with us for 5 years now, I think, and he's definitely part of the band. He lives in LA. The two of us are here in Tampa, and we have little kids. And so, for the first year of the pandemic, we were home with the kids, didn't send them to school. We're trying to keep them safe. So they were doing Zoom school and all of that. And it left very, very little time for any creative thought or even finding creative inspiration. It was like, I wasn't even listening to music. It was just, I'd have like NPR on while I'm cooking nuggets for the 5th time a day. It has definitely been creatively draining. And I think that Louis and I, we both take a lot of inspiration from touring. It's a lot of seeing the world around us. It's, meeting and playing with other bands and being inspired by them. It's meeting the fans and remembering, why we still do this. And so not having that physical connection and the ability to actually like really perform in a visceral way that is sweaty and, like smells and sounds and all the feelings, it's been really hard. The first, I think, 11 weeks of, once everything kind of shut down in March of 2020, we did an online show every Sunday afternoon. And we had been playing on Stage It since I was pregnant with our first kid, and he's 8 years old now. So, a lot of our fans already were used to us playing shows in that format. So that was really cool because it wasn't a stretch. It wasn't weird for us. We'd been doing it for a long time. They're acoustic shows though, not electric, don't have a drummer. Like it's a very different energy. But we did still get to do that. And I think that helped in a lot of ways. But at the same time, I have a radio show. It's a 4-hour show, 5 days a week. Oh, wow. And so, I was really struggling to get that done and be a mom to 2 kids that were home 24/7 and learn all the songs for the Stage It shows. And then by the time that's done, I had no energy to even think about making music, which sucked.
Yeah.
And it's been hard for me and Lewis. I think possibly Lewis even more. You know, we don't talk about this, and he would disagree with me, but I get to do this one by myself. So I mean, he is definitely a creative force that propels me. There have been a number of times where I've wanted to stop doing music, and I have kept going because, you know, it is what we do. You know, the two of us, we went to school. I have a biology degree. He has a neurobio degree. And, you know, we were taking a path that was very different from this one, which took us to California. Figure, look, we'll just do the band for fun for a year. And then, you know, we wanted to go to Berkeley. And so, you know, that was the plan. And then the band started getting some things. We got an HP ad. We got a publishing deal. Things just started growing. We met our producer that we still work with, John Fields, and it all kind of grew naturally. And so we're like, all right, one more year, one more record. It's like one more year, one more record.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's been 20 years of a band now. And so, you know, I can't really stop. At this point, I want to do it so badly. I don't think I've wanted to do it this badly since we started, because I feel like we were forced to take like a 2-year hiatus that we didn't want to take. You know, the band has been one of those bands that's just continued to grow organically over time, and every album is bigger. You know, we retain our fans while gaining more. We have a really good rapport with all the people that support our music. And so it's been kind of a bummer, because that tour, March of 2020, would have probably been our best yet, like headlining tour. And it just stopped. And so we have those dates booked for March of this year. And it's the 4th time rescheduling a few of these. So we're just hoping that it works out. You know, we talked about this before we went live, but we have COVID right now. I'm past week 2. I'm feeling good. Everybody's okay. You know, we're vaccinated and all of that. But that means we have a little more leeway. Our drummer got it in California. You know, at least we know that in March, we should have natural immunity plus our, you know, vaccinated immunity. So as long as the venues are being reasonable and safe, I feel like this tour should be able to go.
Well, that's actually a commonality throughout my conversations. It's through with touring musicians, and it's so tough to try to book anything out so far in advance these days, because they've all had to reschedule, and just maybe cancel or really perform hyper locally, I guess. Like that's what the consensus has been recently. Talking to numerous musicians, they've just had, because they have to perform, they've really had to just perform hyper locally. You know, have you gotten a chance to even perform around the Tampa area? Or
you know, it's funny, we were playing here like once a year, but we've never really cultivated a following here. And I'm not sure if this comes up very often, but playing hometown shows are the hardest. Like it's so strange for us, because Lewis and I both grew up outside of Tampa, this little town called Land O'Lakes. And then we went to Sarasota for college, and then we lived in LA for over 12 years. And so we came back here when we had the kids, because we want them to grow up here with family and friends. And, you know, we can have a house here with a yard. We can't do that in LA.
Yeah.
And so, you know, we came back here, and it's just been, it's fun and sweet and cool when we play local shows. But at the same time, I get very distracted when I look out there and there's like, oh, one of my high school teachers is here. And, you know, it's like all of the parents of the kids that we know are there. And I'm like, oh God, they know me as like the mom at the playground. And now I'm like on stage, and it's like I have 2 different lives and personas kind of, you know, and being on stage is like a release where I finally feel like I'm myself. And when I have all these people that know me in my personal life, I have a little trouble getting there. Like, you know, even 2 shots of whiskey and 2 beers still won't get me there. Like, it's just, it's a very hard like mental thing for me to get over for whatever reason.
No, I get it. Like for me too as well. Like it's hard to. I have like my New York art friends, but then going home to I'm from Boston originally, and trying to connect with my family, it's weird. Or I wouldn't show them my work really, or talk about my
Yeah.
work. It's like
Yeah.
it's like I don't know. Like it's yeah, you have that different persona as an artist comparatively to your family. Oh, you grew up with your family, and they have this preconception, this vision of who you were. And but as an artist, you dive into depths of your subconscious, and that they may not recognize.
Yeah,
Because
like it's a little too personal
yeah,
for me to share with people that only know me casually. Like it's easier to share the depths of my soul with strangers
yeah, that's true.
than people that I casually know that
Yeah,
I have to see every single day, like at drop off at elementary school, or
that's true. Yeah,
it's a weird thing because we typically write about ourselves.
yeah.
We don't usually, occasionally we'll tell other people stories, or when we're out of ideas we steal from the ether or whatever happens when we come up with some melody of sounds. But a lot of it is autobiographical, and so it's like a little like, oh uh-oh, they know all that now.
So like I go back to more biographical and kind of seedlings of how you kind of became the Dollytrots. Sorry, Dollyrots. My mind is
We've
rotting.
been called all a million
Yeah,
things.
yeah. Well, like, how did you figure out? Like, I guess maybe this is a simplified question, but like, or naive question, but did you guys figure out a sound and like the style you really dug that you wanted to really continue?
I think the way it started, I learned to play guitar. I started learning when I was about 17 years old. I was in my folk rock Woodstock era music phase.
Yeah.
And it was around the same time grunge was happening. I loved Hole, of course, Nirvana, Bikini Kill, The Breeders, Vaselines. I loved all of that. I grew up on a lot of oldies radio and top 40 radio. That's what my parents listened to. So, I feel like my interests and my influences in childhood were, girl groups and Motown and top 40. And then in my teenage years, thanks to Nirvana, I learned about, Riot Girl and punk rock. And then, of course, Lewis, he was my first guitar teacher. It was the way that he found his way to my house after school so he could hang out with me.
Yeah.
But then we started learning songs, and the way that I learned to play was just playing along to stuff that I liked. And so, when we started the band, which was our fourth year of college, it was 4 people. The drummer he said he had played drums in high school. He had played 1 drum in marching band. And then the bass player had never played anything before. So Lewis took him to a pawn shop. He got a bass. Lewis had been playing guitar mostly just along to Nirvana since, he was like 14 years old. But he's also a classically trained pianist because his parents are Ecuadorian, very into all of the proper formal musical things. So, we have a piano, making our kids learn it. And then there was me who like just kind of learned how to play along to some things, but was by no means a guitar player. So Lewis had to teach us all to be a band. And so, of course, we just started by playing covers at practice. So our first practices were the Ronettes, the Misfits, the Ramones, and Blink-182. So, that we each got to pick something, and then we would just learn those songs, and then we would learn another one, then we would learn another one, and then we started trying to write, and that's just what it was. We didn't choose a sound. We didn't know what we were doing even. It's just the sound that comes out when we make stuff together.
And now, how has or has it have you evolved your sound and understanding of the craft? Has it evolved to a deeper level now comparatively to when you? I assume so, as you know, everything matures, of course. But what I guess did you notice a point in a turning point where you noticed the difference in sound and the different more complex uh you know compositions, I guess?
Yeah, I think for better or worse, because I feel like the more that I've learned, the more I think about it. And, the harder it is to write. Our first album, it's amazing. And it's so simple. It's basic Ramones pop punk.
Yeah.
And it's perfect. And it's very honest. And, that was called Eat My Heart Out. That was the one that came out on Lookout. And then our second album was Because I'm Awesome. At that point, I kind of knew how to play bass. And, the writing had changed a little bit. We had toured and toured and toured on that first album. And so, I think seeing a lot of other musicians perform, I was definitely a sponge. I was taking in sounds. I was watching people's hands when they were playing things. I know that definitely influenced things at that point. And then that album has the song Because I'm Awesome, which ended up being, like pretty much our biggest song still.
Yeah.
And then when we went to write the next one is when it became kind of complicated in a bad way. We were on Blackheart Records, and Because I'm Awesome was so close to being like a radio song. They had done a lot of radio promotion. We did a lot of top 40 morning shows, was on like Radio Disney, was on TV, like, it was doing things, and they were like, you guys are so close, you got to go work with these songwriters. And then it just got weird because, we lost confidence in ourselves a bit. We were trying to make these songs more complicated than it should have been. It's a simple kind of music that we wanted to make. And I think we were just doubting ourselves. I mean, a lot of good came out of all that songwriting with other songwriters. I mean, we definitely learned things. We honed our craft. We practiced songwriting a lot in a lot of different weird situations. All different times a day, all different places and people's houses and studios. But in the end, we feel like that album wasn't really true. Like it wasn't us. It wasn't just us. And that was the first time that Lewis and I had experienced that, because prior to that, it had just been, us and a drummer in a rehearsal space, or me and Lewis late at night with, a bottle of $2 Chuck, just like writing music very organically. And so that felt a little forced. And at that point I was feeling I'm pretty down on all of it. I was like, man, I feel like I kind of want to just, have a family and take a break from all of this. It was just a weird time. And then we didn't have a choice, and we went out on tour and we played, and I started to like it again. That album was definitely a learning experience. I think it wasn't the most pleasurable time, but it was good for us. And then the next album, the self-titled album, was really fun because, we really knew what we were doing at that point. And we told our producer, like, hey, we want to just make something really poppy and, simple, but we want to experiment a lot with different sounds, like synthesizer sounds, orchestral sounds, all sorts of whatever we think of, we're going to do it and not worry about the live performance of any of these. Because we could just play a dumbed down rock version live, but we want to make a record like that. And I think we had so much fun making that we finally felt like ourselves again. And so I think we're still kind of in that spot. That was also the album where we started crowdfunding. We did a Kickstarter for that record, and became very close to our fan base. You know, they saw every moment of the making of that album, and then it became more of a group effort in a different kind of way. Like we were making this music for them and with them, and it meant more than just us. And so that also propelled things forward. And I think that's kind of still where we're at.
Yeah.
As far as new music right now, we're gonna do something weird again, which is pretty exciting. We have a good friend who took us to an EDM festival in October in Vegas called the Electric Daisy Carnival. And we were like, he was like, listen, I know this isn't your kind of music, but I really want you to experience this. You know, you be my guest and come do this with me. And we're like, sure. You know, we went and got our boosters. Omicron hadn't happened. We're like, all right, we'll do this. And there was something really fun and inspiring about that. So we're considering doing something. We're not making an EDM album, but we are going to make a Dollyrots album and then potentially do some things with some of the songs, like just
kind of mash it up or something.
Yeah, like
nice.
just see what we come up with that's different. You know, download a bunch of new software, and you know, we'll do all of the rock and roll tracks first, and then see if we can transport them into a different world and
kind of chop and screw it up. And you could, you have the initial, like, you know, solid album, right, and tracks, the solid traditional, your solid, you know, tracks. Then you could have this other layer, you know, this other, you know, side B or so, whatever you want to call it. But it's all just like experimental stuff with your own work, you know. And that's actually what I love to do with my, like, I always generally write in the morning. You know, I have a typewriter. I'm just like at the typewriter and kind of more stream of conscious stuff, but you know, inspired by you know, Burroughs cut up technique. I always love to just cut up my own work and also paste it in with like some oil and pastels, and you know, just make a visual kind of artifact from my own, you know, subconscious. Not even like trying to make anything good. It's just more experimental methodology, you know. But
I think it helps grow when you do stuff like that.
Exactly. I think it really solidifies your mind into you know, into this curious organ. You know, you get that curiosity going is the better way of saying it. And you know, you get into that kind of scientific kind of process of oh, I have this kind of thought, or I you know, theory. I want to test it out and use these different methods to see what comes out of the results, you know. And so I find that process fascinating, the experimental process, and it'd be cool. I'm fascinated to hear what you guys come up with on that.
It might be so terrible no one ever gets to hear it, but but maybe we'll do something kind of cool.
Well, terrible is always, it's not always bad, you know. Like
it's true,
you know. But actually, just going back to the decision of when you turned this hobby, music as a hobby, into a full-time career. What was that decision like? Was there like external pushback from your family and stuff, and were they like, you guys are nuts, what are you doing? Like,
it was really, we disappointed them hardcore. Mostly Lewis's family, you know, he was born in Ecuador, so the first generation, you know, here in the United States, and you know, his dad is an engineer, like PhD. His mom, you know, has tons of business school. They really wanted him to be a doctor or a lawyer, and that's what he was going to do, even though there's no way he could have been a doctor. I mean, he could have, and I don't think he would be a happy human. It's not something he was driven toward. It was just something he thought he had to do. And I mean, he liked neurobiology. It's really cool and interesting, but you know, it wasn't his chosen path. And so I think, you know, for me, it was a little bit different. I think my parents would have been okay with it. My dad, he is an entrepreneur. My mom was a nurse, who ended up being vice president of a hospital. And they both were just very hard workers. They always were like, listen, we don't really care what you do, but you have to do it very well. You know, you have to do everything as well as you can. Like if you choose something, sorry, I'm gonna let the dog out. If you choose something, you have to really do it, or it's a disappointment. And so, you know, at least try your best. It was always, did you try your best? It's like, yeah. And it's like, all right, then we're proud of you. And it's like, did you try your best? And if I was like, not really, you know, they're like, well, then you need to do better. And so I think they would have been okay. My dad was most upset that I was moving to California.
Oh, yeah.
I was very far away. And so the move was the most upsetting thing to them. It wasn't my career path. Because my mom, she's like, listen, is that what you feel passionate about? I'm like, yeah. And she's like, then that's what you have to do. And so, you know, Lewis's parents they were upset we were leaving. They were upset that once again, because he wouldn't have gone to New College if it hadn't been to follow me. And so like he got accepted to like Rice and some really, really great schools, but instead he followed me, and they were like, once again, here he goes, following this girl to California to be a musician, you know. And so it was not a great thing, you know, and at that moment, which I totally understand.
Well, hindsight, you can see that perspective.
Oh my God, yeah. I mean, we got married, graduated college, got married, and then we moved shortly after. And I think it wasn't until our second album, and, you know, we had a few really good placements in film and TV, and we we got fired from our jobs at that point, because we were gone on tour so much, they couldn't really do it anymore. We had really great support though in LA. I was working at the California Science Center, which is like this big science museum.
Yeah. Oh yeah, yeah, of course.
Get out of here. You can go play. So I took care of all of the animal exhibits at the Science Museum, and it was great. I only had 2 coworkers, and when I was on tour, they would just cover for me all the time. And then Lewis, he actually worked at a laboratory, he worked at a LabCorp laboratory testing samples. You know, they're the people that are checking all of our COVID tests right now, probably.
Yeah.
And that everybody wanted us to do well so much that they let us drag that along for so long. And then finally they're like, listen, we got to hire somebody because we can't keep doing this. It's brutal.
Yeah.
So that choice was made for us. It was like, you can't work anymore. It was like, we better start really making money on tour and figuring out merchandising. And then we started having our online store. And we've always just lived as meagerly as possible and save every bit of money we can.
Now, how did that move really help propel your work and your musical work? Being in LA, I'm sure, writing wise and creativity wise, pardon me. I'm sure it certainly drastically had that influence, that culture, you know, LA, you know, it's just LA, you know, and
it was amazing.
And then also, when did you or what was the circumstances that led you to like getting your first record deal or a label deal, I guess?
So
did you just run into somebody, or like, and they heard your stuff, or?
Kind of. I mean, when we moved out there, we started we either rehearsed every night or we went to a show.
Yeah.
So we would work all day, and then we would go hang out, you know, every night. And it was just a matter of meeting people. On the drive from Florida to California, we had one of the first real important meetings of people. When we were driving through Houston, we saw that the Breeders were playing. And so we stopped and we tried to get into the show, and it was sold out. And we're so disappointed that I actually started crying. I was just exhausted and emotionally exhausted too. I just left my home, left my family. I'm in a car with my pets and my guitar and my clothes. And I was like, oh, I just wanted to see them play. Like I had never seen them. And I cried. It was at a place called Fitzgerald's. Cried. Then I was like, let me go talk to the door guy. Maybe he'll take pity on us. And I was like, hey, I got $20. We're moving to California. We just left Florida. Can you please let us in? And he's like, I don't want your money. Just don't say anything. And he like pushed us in the door. And so then after the show, we're like, man, wouldn't it be cool if we could meet them? I was like, we got nowhere to go. We're sleeping in the cars. So we hung out for a little while, and their road manager, his name's Wolfie, he saw us standing around. He's like, what are you kids doing? You want to meet the girls? And we were like, yeah. And he was like, they'll be out soon. He's like, what are you doing? What do you guys do? And we're like, we're a band. We're moving to LA. And we're like, we got our cat, our tarantula, and our prairie dog and iguana in the car. And he's like, what? I was like, yeah, we cracked the windows. Like, we're very safe. I studied biology and worked at a vet. Like they were fine. But he's like, the girls would love to meet the pets. And so they come out and we talk to them, they meet the pets, and, we're like, wow, this is so cool. And as we were leaving, Kim was like, hey, Wolfie, give them your number and, have them get in touch when they get to LA. We're like, we'll be back pretty soon. If we can help you out, we will. And we were like, yeah, okay, whatever. So we gave him our number, and he, we had one cell phone that we were sharing, and we, had his number. Then we got to LA and we were like, hey, we're here. And we stayed with our drummer's aunt in Hemet, California for a couple weeks. And then we stayed with a guy that we knew from high school for a couple more weeks, in a studio apartment right behind the Chinese Theater in Hollywood, before we found the apartment that Lewis and I still have. It's in Koreatown. But we got the apartment, and then Lewis got a job. And then the next week we called Wolfie and we're like, hey, we need a rehearsal space. Could you recommend anywhere? He's like, yep, no problem. I'm going to get you one. Hold on a sec. I'll call you back. And so they got us the rehearsal space across the hall from them.
Oh, cool.
And, yeah. And we stayed there for a pretty long time. We just moved out of there when we moved to Florida. They moved out before us, but it was in Vernon when they were all living in East LA. And because it was the Fear guys backing the Breeders, which was pretty amazing. But yeah, that kind of propelled us in a way. Kim and Kelly would come and sit on the crappy couch we had found that we brought in and just watch us practice, and then they let us open a couple shows for them. And, we gained some confidence, maybe that wasn't earned yet. And at the same time, we were just practicing all the time. We were going to shows. We played this one show at a place called The Joint. We used to play there all the time. They let us play. We had to sell tickets, but all our coworkers would buy them and come see us because they were awesome. Our neighbors in our building, it was the sweetest thing in the world. But they would come support us. And we met this guy, Mitch, who was a producer, and his wife, Marina, one night. And through them, we made our first demo. And Marina worked at our first publishing company, which was called Windswept Pacific, which ended up being bought by BMG, which is where all that music is now. So that happened. Then, now that we were at that publishing company, we got a phone call one afternoon, and they were like, hey, go out on this audition. It's a real long shot, but, just go. Try it. They liked your demo enough to see you play. So we left work. They were fine with it. We go to Santa Monica, and we walk into this weird building, and there are these guys sitting at a table, and backline set up, and they're like, all right, play us your most garage rock song. We're like, well, what would that be? And so we played them our songs, Jackie Chan and Feed Me, Pet Me. And they're like, okay, thank you. We'll let you know. And then like 3 hours later, they're like, you got it. You got the gig. And it was for a Hewlett Packard ad.
Oh, cool.
And it was huge. It was in movie theaters ahead of Lord of the Rings, like the premiere and
cool.
The whole run of that. And so then that propelled us. And in recording, because we had to do a re-record of that. And in the recording of that, we met John Fields, who is our producer. And when we walked in there, he was like, hey, they booked this out until midnight. Tell me that you have a whole album ready to record. And we were like, you have no idea. We are so ready to record an album. He's like, all right, well, just, keep it on the down low, but don't leave. Okay. And we're like, okay. And so we did our stupid garagey re-recording of our terrible song. And they left and they're like, have some fun. You know, we got the place till midnight. We're like, okay. They left. They walked out the door. He's like, all right, how many songs do you have? We're like, 10. He's like, let's do it. He's like, first pass, guitar, bass, and drums. Second pass, second guitar and vocals. And we're going to record a whole album. We're at Capitol Records Studio B. And we did it. We walked out of there at midnight with our first album, minus 2 songs. We went and recorded a couple more songs with him like the next week. And we got it to Rodney Bingenheimer at K-Rock. I think I found him at Cantor's, where he always is still. I found him at Cantor's and gave him the demo. I'm pretty sure. We also like mailed it in the mail, all that stuff. And he played it. And then that was amazing. And then there was another station called Indie 103 at the time, and they started playing it as well. It was our song Kick Me to the Curb. And we had found a really cool scene called Kiss or Kill that we were a pretty big part of. Our shows were like really good. And so then we started getting the scouts coming out and all this stuff. And I can't remember exactly how it happened, but someone from Lookout Records reached out and they're like, hey, we've got this new imprint, Panic Button. It's the Screech and Weasel dudes. You know, we're taking it off their hands and it's going to be our punk rock, you know, sub label. You guys want to do it? And that's how it happened. So
very cool.
Yeah. Then of course Lookout folded.
Yeah.
So for Because I'm Awesome, we had recorded most of Because I'm Awesome on our own. Then we were on Warped Tour, and so I had demos, and I gave one demo to who is now Laura Jane Grace. I gave one demo to Fat Mike, which led to me and our drummer Amy riding on the NoFX tour bus from Salt Lake City to Denver, one of the strangest nights of my life. He told me the only way I was going to make it was to be more of a dude on stage and wag my cock around. I was like, well, that's not going to happen. But that day I also gave it to Joan Jett. She finished her set, walked off, and I had seen her around all summer, but I hadn't had the nerve to talk to her. And before my mind could stop my legs, I was standing right in front of her holding the CD. And I was like, hey, we recorded this, but our record label is no more. Would you consider it for Blackheart? You know, it would mean a lot if you'd even listen. She's like, yeah, I love your band. I've been watching you all the time. And she's like, well, listen. And so I'm like shaking. I left and I go tell like the band. And then we thought, oh, well, that's over. And then a couple weeks later, Blackheart Records called and they're like, hey, we'll put it out. We love it. And that was that. And then from there, we've done crowdfunding, and you know, we've worked with Wicked Cool, which is Stevie Van Zandt's label, for the last couple of releases. They got great distro. They let us do whatever we want, and it's perfect.
Well, have you noticed? Sorry, I had rushed into my thought real quick. I was gonna say, did you notice a difference or a comparison, like working with a label comparatively to, you know, independence and crowdfunding, you know, and doing it yourself comparatively to working with a label? I guess the question is like, what were those differences, or do you find things creatively kind of stuffy working with the label comparatively to controlling all the processes on your side, or was there that big gap, or am I just kind of making things up?
Well, I mean, so when we worked with Panic Button under Lookout, the album was already done. So, you know, it was more just seeing like how long it takes to get anything done in a business where you have to get 10 people to say yes instead of just moving forward.
Yeah.
You know, it was kind of our first foray into business, really. But then with Blackheart, you know, the first album, or with them, Because I'm Awesome, was pretty much recorded. But of course, you know, Kenny Laguna works with Joan Jett. He's our longtime producer and manager. He had ideas, you know, he wanted to put his like touch on it. So we went back into the studio and added some background vocals and tambourine parts and flourishes and things. And part of that was a little like, but I don't really like that. But we did it, you know, and so it was more of a little bit of a tit for tat at times. But they it was more of the same, that things took longer than we wanted. We wanted things to move faster all the time. We wanted to just be moving forward because we didn't have time to sit and not be on tour or putting out music because we didn't have a job at that point.
Yeah.
And, if Uber and, DoorDash had been a thing, like we would have been doing that, but it was really hard to find like side gigs that we could do. I mean, I did a lot of temp work where I would like be a receptionist for like a week at some big office building, but it was very hard to come by, and it was temp work. And so I was getting like $7 an hour, when I know that the temp company was getting paid $20 an hour. It was just brutal and soul crushing, and I didn't want to be doing that anymore. But creatively, Blackheart was awesome. I mean, it did get a little shaky when they wanted us to work with all the songwriters, and then we kind of lost ourselves in that for a little while. But like I said, in the end, that was good.
Yeah.
But just like, it felt like bureaucracy, and it was such a small label, but there were stumbling blocks all the time, and disagreements about things looking certain ways, or color, like the color of the CD, or it was just like, when it's just me and Lewis, we can make those decisions. The album that we just are putting out, we had 3 days to do a track order, remixes, get it mastered, and have artwork and be done. And there's no way that could ever happen with a label. Like,
that's true. Yeah.
Impossible. Wicked Cool put it out, but they allow us to do all of that on our own. And I think after you've been a band for 20 years, you really don't need somebody doing any of that. It was the same with management. We had a number of managers, but in the end, it stifled and slowed things down a lot of the time. There were opportunities, but wasn't really worth it. Booking agent, absolutely necessary. Lawyer, absolutely necessary.
Yeah.
But all the other biz stuff, accountant, absolutely necessary. All the rest of it, publicist, we've had the same people, pretty much from the start. And, that's our team. Dana, who's our publicist now, has worked with us since the first record.
Oh, wow.
Our lawyer, Joe, same thing. So it's, they don't question us or whatever. They just help us move forward, and they know us so well now that, it's pretty cool. And Wicked Cool is a very different kind of label. I mean, it's probably because it's Stevie Van Zandt, and he's been through the ringer a million bajillion times. And like the music biz, the film biz, so he allows a lot of creative freedom, and Dennis, who runs the label, is the same way, and it's been a really awesome experience with them.
How do you link up with them by chance?
Well, Because I'm Awesome was happening, Joan Jett had a radio show on the Underground Garage, which is affiliated with Wicked Cool Records.
Oh, okay.
And Because I'm Awesome was a song, it was the coolest song in the world, I guess in 2006 when it came out. And that's like every year the fans vote. I think this was the 16th year this year. The fans vote on the best, coolest song in the world. Every week Stevie picks a coolest song, and it goes into heavy rotation. So,
cool.
So they knew of our band. And then we were out on tour, and Dennis, he was like, hey, can I come talk to you guys? And he's like, would you like to do 7-inch or, do something with the label? It'd be really cool. We were like, yeah, that sounds great. And so we did a couple 7-inches at first. And then we were like, let's just work together this way. And so it was very organic and low pressure.
Cool. Well, did things change when you're starting to have a family? Like, when you're pregnant with your first child, pardon me, I don't know their names.
River and Daisy.
Oh, cool. Do you slow down perchance, or did you take any breaks from recording or touring, or just music in general?
When I found out we had a very long-term plan. So we actually bought the house in Florida a few years before we planned to start trying to have a baby. So we had it was like a 5-year plan that we had started. But the one thing we didn't know is if we would be able to tour. You know, we figured we'd still be able to record, but the touring was a big question mark because, you know, we didn't know what it was like to have a baby, you know?
Yeah.
And so during my pregnancy, we were full steam ahead. We recorded an acoustic album right in the middle of my pregnancy. And I think I played my last show when I was like 7 or 8 months pregnant.
Wow.
And then we went into the studio and recorded our album Barefoot and Pregnant. And so then we had the baby. We had River November 25th. And we had a Southern California tour with Black Flag in January.
Wow.
And it was like, I said yes to it, and I wasn't sure if I'd be able to do it, but it was only like 4 or 5 dates. And, you know, we had a friend who she was a nanny, and she had also toured with bands. And so we asked her before we were pregnant, we're like, Whit, when we do this, if we do this, will you please help us and you'll come with us? She's like, yes, of course. So,
cool.
You know, we had our person that was going to come with us, and it was fine. You know, I mean, I was breastfeeding up until the minute I got on stage, but it was actually really good for me because I did get lost in the early motherhood and the change of my mind. Like the switch flipped when I found out I was pregnant and I was suddenly a mom, and my priorities changed. I couldn't watch horror movies anymore. I liked different foods, which sucked a lot of the time.
Yeah.
But like I mentally changed. I was physically different. I felt pretty self-conscious. And then the first song of that first show on stage, I was like, oh my God, I can still be me. Oh, she's in there somewhere. It's just, she's only there on stage now, you know, and that's it. And then I go right backstage to mom. And, you know, that's what I was talking about earlier. Like, that's still what it is. Like, even at the hometown shows, at least, you know, once I'm like 30 seconds into the first song, I can usually remember what it's like to be that version of myself.
Yeah.
But yeah, that kid, River, he toured so much, you know, those early years of his life. He's toured in Europe. The double-decker buses are the best because there's a lounge in the double-decker buses, and that was always the daycare, and that's like the kids zone. But yeah, we tour in an RV and we bring a nanny. And, you know, when I was pregnant with our daughter, there was a 3-year age difference. I was finally feeling kind of normal. And then I got pregnant again as planned. But that was harder. I was more tired. You know, that was like, oh my God, we have 2 kids. Are we really going to be able to do this? And we have, you know, our crew is now very important. Justin, our drummer, you know, he's a new dad. His baby is 10 months old. But he's been a dad, you know, ever since he started touring with us. He helps a lot with the kids. Our friend still comes with us on tour. It's either her or, you know, one of my best friends. Her name's Emily. She's a teacher. So we try and go during her spring break. And then our tour manager, Miski, huge help. And then Nick's our driver. And they're kind of the kids' aunts and uncles. And, you know, it's definitely a team effort. It's hard. But, you know, we stay in hotels every night, and whoever's up first goes and gets the kids like all the breakfast and brings it to the room and feeds them. Like it's definitely a family type situation now, which is cool because it's a different way to see a lot of the same places we've been seeing for 20 years. You know, now there's a new perspective. We kind of do some touristy stuff. You know, it's cool.
I was going to ask one of my notes or just on my pad was any, you know, unique life lessons you could impart to your children over the past years of touring, like any life lessons you picked up throughout this crazy journey that you'd kind of pass on?
I hope something they take from it is that people are good. The vast majority of anyone that they are around are gonna be good people, you know, and that's something that I didn't really learn until we started touring a lot. And the number of people who opened their homes to us in those early days, we were in, Ford Econoline van, sleeping in parking lots. Sometimes if it was cold, because we used to tour in the winter all the time, even though we didn't know how to drive in snow. I mean, we were touring all the time. And sometimes at the end of the show, I'd be like, hey, we got nowhere to stay tonight. It's going to be cold to be in the van if anyone wants to take us home. And we did all the time. And, people would be like, hey, you could come to our house. My wife has to work at 7 a.m. She's asleep. If you can just be really quiet, you guys can sleep in, help yourselves to food and lock the door on your way out. That happened so many times that, I feel like we have a lot of good karma to give, and we've received. And, our kids still know to be wary of strangers. And, we teach them the reality of the world, but at the same time, it's important to give people the benefit of the doubt and to try to see the world in a positive way, which has been really hard the last few years.
Oh, that's true. Well, for most of us, I think too, the last couple of years have been chaotic, but just to kind of wrap, I guess, any like favorite venue or just or memorable performance or just energy, I guess any favorite venue. I'm sure it's been hundreds or whatever, countless, but
it's so hard. There's one glorious fuck up night that's kind of a fun story to tell. We were on tour with our friends Bowling for Soup, who took us out for a couple of years. We lived in their tour bus with them and opened the shows, and it was awesome. Learned a lot from them, watching them perform. So we were touring in the UK. This was pre-kids, and we were in Brighton. And it was a really cool big venue with, I think there were 3 levels of balcony.
Oh, cool.
And then like a pit in the front. And I broke a bass string, which always sucks. And, it happens so rarely. But, we're a 3-piece band. So it's like when that bass goes out, it's weird. It's empty. And I'm still singing. And I'm not good at being a front person, like doing that whole hold the microphone and like get up there. Like, I can't do it. Like, I cringe at the idea of myself doing it. And like a lot of performers that I like, if they do that, it's very subconscious and not forced.
Yeah.
And then there's a blanket, all the bands that I feel are kind of just not real are the like, it's like Broadway or something. It's like, no, it's rock and roll. That's not what you're supposed to be doing. You're not supposed to be acting. You're supposed to be emoting in art. Like,
exactly.
So
yeah.
I don't think I'm very good at doing that. So I was mortified. And then one of the guitar techs for Bowling for Soup brought me one of their basses. And I was like, oh, awesome. Okay. So I strap it on and I go to like jump back in the song. I was really proud of myself. And it wasn't tuned down because we play 1 step lower than our recordings because it's easier on my voice to do, because we also don't take any days off on tour. Yeah. And so, we found that like strains it a little bit less. So I play it and it sounds awful. And so I like try to transpose it in the moment, trying to keep control, trying to look like I don't give a shit when I'm dying inside. And then I broke a string on that bass.
Oh no.
And I was like, no. And then they had restrung my other bass and gave it back to me. And it was so wildly, weirdly out of tune that I couldn't do it. And I put it down and I crowd surfed instead. And I don't know if I haven't heard from anyone that was at that show. I don't know if it was terrible. I don't know if it was awesome. I've just tried to forget it because it was like one of the hardest shows for me. Lewis thinks it was the greatest show ever. Actually, the second greatest show. The other greatest show ever was at the Triple Rock in Minneapolis, Minnesota. And that was for a while there next to, did you know the Abbey Lounge in Somerville?
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
So the Abbey Lounge, that for a while, that was like a #1 mostly because of the fams there and the bands that we played with. It was a really fun scene. But right around that time, the other favorite place was Triple Rock. And what happened was they poured drinks real strong at Triple Rock. So I had to like whiskey diets or something. And then the band before us, their thing was that all the house lights were turned off. So it was pitch black and they had like 6 strobe lights. And I watched their set for like maybe 2 songs or something. And then I got violently ill and I was like puking and I had a headache and like I was really like physically sick. And I think it was from the strobe lights. I don't know what happened, but I was still like not right when it came time to play. And I blacked out.
Wow.
I completely blacked out on stage. I busted my finger open. And so there was blood from like, I was wearing a white shirt too. There was blood from this shoulder down my pant leg,
Wow.
all over the bass. Apparently I was just screaming at the crowd. It was a very Courtney Love evening. I then, after the show, it was like -7 degrees, something insane. I went straight out to the van. I sat in there, projectile vomited. It was a brand new van. Then I went backstage and I yelled at Lewis and I punched him. The only time I've punched him ever. And I'm glad he didn't leave me. It was very not cool. But I was literally out of my mind.
Wow.
And I have never been so mortified and apologized so like more times to my band, to the people we stayed with, to like any of the fans that were there. And everyone was like, no way, that was really cool. And I was like, the Triple Rock is never going to let us go back. We're never playing there again. It was so bad. And then we got home from tour and we went to our PO box and there was this big box. I was like, what is that? And we opened it and it was a full set for the band and crew of Triple Rock staff Dickies button-up shirts.
Oh, cool. So
and they're
cool.
like, can't wait to have you back. And I was like, I don't understand. Like the most mortifying night of my life apparently was my best performance. So I don't know. Everybody thought it was great.
Yeah.
But never happen again. Better never happen again.
Yeah. Oh no, yeah. Well, I wouldn't want to keep you too much longer. I know you're still kind of running low on energy due to COVID. But anything we should be excited for or on the lookout for from you guys?
Yeah.
Digitally, I guess, if we can't go and see you live anywhere in the near future, but
we have the new record coming out or came out. I'm not sure when this is popping up on the internet.
Probably a few weeks out. Definitely a few weeks out.
So January 21st, new album came out. It's a double album. And because we struggled a bit with creativity, it is a retrospective. It's B-sides, rarities, and covers. So one disc is, all the B-sides, rarities. The other disc is all covers. Most of the stuff is previously unreleased or on a very small release. And it's awesome. It's cool to be like, oh, we've been a band 20 years. Let's just, find, I think it's 24 songs to throw out there into the world. And there are actually 2 new songs on it. Too Fun for My Health is the second single, just came out. And the first one was, oh, why can't I think of it? Yeah, my brain's starting to conk out.
Yeah.
Just like all the rest. That's what it is. So those 2 singles were actually new and unreleased tracks that we, just like all the rest, we recorded probably in like 2010. And then the new one, Too Fun for My Health, we recorded and we thought, it's kind of weird and COVID-y. By the time we ever put this out, it's going to be totally irrelevant. And still now it's still relevant. It was more about like that bad friend that is too fun for your health, but it also works for COVID. But we plan to tour in March. We got a 2-week tour through the Midwest that hopefully will happen. Since our family is finishing, hopefully, our round of COVID and we're vaccinated, we should be safe to tour. Our drummer also had it and is vaccinated. So unless it looks like an unsafe thing for fans or venues, we'll be there in March. Thank
Cool.
goodness, because it's the third and fourth time rescheduling a lot of these shows. So I'm very much looking forward to that. So
oh yeah. And I'm sure your fans are too. I mean, people are just so thirsty for live performance. It's unbearable sometimes when it's like, yeah, things are booked out, and then you're like, oh, it's so excited, and then canceled due to COVID. So it's like that's the new norm right now, But
then in May we're actually doing a UK tour too.
Oh, cool.
With Bowling for Soup and Lit, which should be funny. We're opening that. Should be fun, an adventure.
Yeah.
So that's it for now. We had a cruise booked, the Great Rock and Roll Cruise. It's Buzzcocks, the Professionals, Graham Parsons, Pogatry, which is some of the members of the Pogues. Really, really awesome group, Waddles. But it's being postponed until 2023 now.
Oh yeah.
So
not new. That's the new norm, like you said. So
Dollyrots.com has everything.
Cool. Well, I wish you safe journeys and be health as well to your family and to the band and everybody helping you produce your wonderful stuff, and have a wonderful afternoon.
Thank you. It was great talking to you, Robert. Yeah, it's about evening now.
Cool.
Time to nuke some chicken nuggets.
Oh, me too. For myself, but
yeah.
Take care.